Look, we'll open it up to questions, but I might just ask one just to kick it off, and that's James, why fortnightly FOGO rather than weekly FOGO?
Okay, so I suppose there's two reasons. We already had a green waste collection in place. We'd had it in place for about 10 years, so we already had that that service level. And we actually made a decision at the time to keep the red lid bin weekly because we were concerned that our contamination rates would increase, because if you're a resident who may not be particularly au fait with the systems or maybe not participate, we believe that the behaviour would be to put that stinking, heaving mass of nappies in the bin that's going to go out that week. So we thought that the fortnightly collection on organics would try and keep that contamination low. So, yeah, that's why.
Thanks, James. Over here.
Golden Valley Regional Waste Management Group. I was going to ask James the same question about the frequency of the bins. We've gone to the red bin, we've gone full organics green bin. This is our 5th month, and we've gone the red bin every week. We've alternated the green and the recycle fortnightly. But other councils who are following us are doing different things. They're going the red one. You know, I'm going with the keep it simple, sister, you know, for that reason, but I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Unfortunately, I've only got the one microphone, so it's a bit...
Yeah, I suppose it probably is a... I mean, I know some people are saying that the keep the organics weekly because you'll encourage more. There's a lot of volume in organics, and so people are concerned that it's going to be odorous because there's food waste going in. But our experience has been, and just as a word of caution, if you've ever been to Armidale, it's not exactly the hottest place. So we were sort of not, you know, not 40 degrees and stuff like that. So I think that you've got to just basically say to yourself, if we're going to go with fortnightly, these are the reasons why. If you're going to go to weekly, I would be arguing that you probably keep them both weekly. But certainly fortnightly's working for us, and I think a couple of other councils in our region have gone fortnightly as well. So stick to your guns, and I think you'll be fine.
A question here.
I was just going to say quickly on at Narrabri, it does get 40-ish. That's only a temperate sort of summer day. 40's a nice day. So, and we have fortnightly full organics collection, and it hasn't been a great problem.
Hi, Herman Boser from Armidale, and thanks for the great talks, all of you. I want to ask a question about the money Armidale make from the green waste, from the mulch or compost rather. But before I do, just backing up James on the fortnightly collection, I think for most people in Armidale, including myself, you know, I'm a bit of a hobby gardener, that's usually enough. And of course, if you sort of have huge volumes, you can take a trailer or your ute or whatever, and deliver it yourself. So, and the other reason that James, probably too polite to mention, fortnightly is obviously cheaper than weekly in our tightened budgetary constraint. My question is, and I should know the answer, James, but I don't, and you may have an answer to it. What's the? You said we sell the compost at $35 or $25 a tonne. How much do we make annually? Do you have any?
Basically, so we're up around the 15,000 1,500 cubic metres per year. At let's say 80% of that, or 75% at the A grade. I haven't got an exact figure, but they're the volumes that we're talking about. And I'll be really honest. We break even. We're not making money out of selling compost. We could probably market it at a higher rate and try and go that way, but we were concerned that we would price people out of the market, and we were using the compost as a tool, as a bit of a gift back to the community to reward them for helping us in the kitchen. So that there is some strategy, there's some method to our madness, so to speak. But you've got to understand too that a cubic metre of landfill space is worth to me about $160. So every cubic metre that I don't put in there in organics is a saving, not to mention the methane and the other advantages of not putting it in there. So yes, it's I don't have an exact figure on the top of my tongue. Yep.
questions? Jonathan?
Michael Pearce, Uralla Shire Council, also a member of the Northern Inland Regional Waste Group. I just question for James, but just thanks the presenters today, particularly Kath. Well done, Kath and Sue. James, in your opinion, how important is the quality of your compost?
I would argue that it's the most important thing. We don't want a situation where FOGO, source separated compost, gets a bad name. All it would take is a few communities to have some bad examples, and I would be concerned that people might not want to buy the product because they're concerned there's a problem with it. So, and I think that quality is a good demonstration that you're fair income about resource recovery and closing the loop. And the more you can produce a good quality product, that wholesale sell, the community talk. Don't be afraid. Don't be worried about that. If you and they'll know if you're trying to sell them a pup. And the quality is paramount in making sure you get participation, I think.
Thank you.
John Beckett, Tamworth Regional Council. I guess this is just a question to the panel in general. Closing the gap on the cost, the expense of green waste processing, very much aware of that. From your experience, do you have any personal preferences or feedback about whether charging for receival, i.e. an upfront gate fee for green waste management, as opposed to charging for the product post-processing is a more acceptable methodology to be employed?
I guess in my experience, when we commenced the green waste service, we did put a gate charge. Up until then, Cootamundra had been free for green waste since day one. We do get a lot, as I said, and I think it has definitely helped the quality in the green waste. We've got a minimal gate charge. I think we charge minimum loads $6, so it's not dear. But we do charge a higher rate for material over 150 mil in diameter, which obviously takes a bit more treatment. So I think it works hand in hand. I think we had to raise the community's awareness of what we're trying to achieve with green waste. We can't keep just shredding and storing on site. We're going to, we know we're going to use some of it later on for rehabilitation and other works, but it's a management thing year by year, and we've got to reduce and make the public aware of where, it just doesn't leave their house and go nowhere. It piles up and we've got to handle it. So I think it's prudent to charge, yeah.
To the Peter and Uralla, I think it was Uralla, wasn't it? Yeah. The issue of closing those old landfills, you both used the EPA as your trigger to motivate your council, and I assume that's largely because the economics didn't work by any stretch, that most rural remote landfills are incredibly underpriced or free. And so the only way to get council to move was to say, oh, I've got the big bogeyman EPA. Which brings me to the question, if you had a choice of a landfill levy that drove that option, or the EPA regulating landfills more closely in rural communities, or licensing them and requiring specific upgrades, which of those two models would you say was more appropriate, implementable, acceptable to your councillors?
Definitely not a levy. Look, I've worked with both. I was over at Casino for a number of years when the levy came in that area. And I know that the levy over there in that area now is at the point where the resentment with councillors and their general manager has become quite high. It's now well over $1 million per annum for the levy for Richmond Valley Council, where I was. The process that we've been through at Narrabri, where regulation started to step up a bit of our landfills, was a fairly easy sell to the councillors, because the EPA were quite clear, and quite rightly clear, that what we were doing was unacceptable. And it gave us that trigger to do the right thing, and really just to pull our finger out, find the money and get done what we needed to do. We didn't need a levy to do that. And as I said, I think if you're a bit more imaginative about where you can pull some money in and how you can do things, and the EPA is prepared to be flexible about the implementation of their normal requirements, then it can be affordable and it is achievable.
I'd have to somewhat agree with Pete as well, although I'm not necessarily opposed to the economics and mechanism of a levy, because I believe that there's one thing that I've struggled with the community is to get that acceptance that there is a cost of waste disposal, and that idea that when you buy something, you have to pay for the end of life. So it's your responsibility to recycle it, or if it has to be disposed of, then you have to pay for that. And I think that's our community hasn't got there yet. And I don't know how many communities really have, honestly. But I think that having a good relationship with our local EPA has certainly allowed our council to be really open and honest about our level of resources, what we can and can't do, and say, okay, this is where we need to get to, and they've really helped us along that way. And that includes, yes, asking for, a pretty strongly worded letter to go to the General Manager about that particular landfill. I happen to go on annual leave the next week, so I did get the call while I was on leave from my director saying, what the hell have you done? I'm like, well, hang on, it's okay, trust me on this one. But I think we needed that bit of a jolt. And I think the EPA can do that just from higher regulations and higher expectations, but also allowing us to get there. So using those waste groups, using the networks to set a level of environmental standards across the board and work towards those. But I certainly believe that I have a problem with saying to the community, you can bring your waste in for nothing. I think there needs to be a shift, and I'm certainly driving that shift from my council, following the lead of two other neighbouring councils to say, I'm going to put a nominal charge on that, and I'm going to work towards, being a little bit standard as my neighbours are. If you want to put something in the ground, you're going to pay for it. So, I think that we've got to go that way. We've got to send a price signal somewhere.
Look, thanks everybody for your attention. We better wrap up now. I think it's afternoon tea. So would you please join with me and thank the speakers?